The F1 boss, Stefano Domenicali, continues to voice that he is not, keyword, not a fan of free practice. This is also something that hit the airwaves and has been newsworthy this week. He says, while it's extremely useful, obviously, to the team engineers, it's not something that the public enjoys. So he would support canceling free practice. Does F1 need another format change?
It's a strange one, isn't it? Because I think when we work in Formula One, we get very cynical about practice. I mean, I've watched far too many practice sessions in my life that now I tried to work out how many practice sessions I would have watched in my time covering Formula One. And yeah, my conclusion was it's too many. We don't need a number on it. And I think that what's really surprising to me, to be honest with you, is that it's become a televised event and it's become something that a lot of fans really do seem to enjoy. They seem to enjoy getting there on a Friday, turning the TV on and watching 2 hours of practice, which when I was growing up was very different. I used to like to tune in at qualifying. You'd see you'd know kind of what had happened over practice, but really you started with the competitive session. I think the bigger question that F1 has at the moment, and this is actually quite an interesting one, given where we are with Netflix and with the boom of popularity, is what the motivations are behind this. So this statement seems to be that Formula One wants to make practice sessions more meaningful, but by the very nature of practice, they're not really meaningful in the sense of being competitive. You know, they're very helpful for the teams. They're very meaningful for the guys that are making those cars go fast, you know, and be reliable, be efficient, etc. But from a viewing perspective, so one thing I was told is that one of the discussions that came up is, do we find a way to award points at the end of it, even if there's small points? And you think, well, how does that benefit the overall integrity of the season if it just ends up that Red Bull this season gets 10 more points every Friday than everybody else? You know, how do you do it? How do you make it fair? And then, I mean, the counter argument to practice is that it does seem that some of the most entertaining races we've had in previous seasons has been when there's limited running on Fridays and on the Saturday morning session. You know, teams come into qualifying with less information, less data. They maybe don't have their setups down how they want it. You know, they don't understand the tires as well, and there's a bit of a question mark over strategies, and they go into the race maybe feeling a little bit under-equipped. You know, these cars are so reliable now, or at least, well, this year there's been some that haven't been so reliable, but generally speaking, compared to a few years ago, they're massively reliable. So maybe taking practice away and having it a bit more that you turn up and you pretty much start competitive sessions straight away, that I could really get behind. I think that would really benefit the spectacle. But if it's a case of we're going to do that by making points in practice and making practice really gimmicky, I think that that's a step in the wrong direction for Formula One. So if the idea is let's make the sessions, the weekends, more competitive by slimming down practice, giving the teams less time to work on their cars and making, you know, adding to the kind of unexpected factor, then I'm all for it. But I think from what we've heard from Formula One, some of the discussions going on with the teams, does seem like there's a few gimmicks flying around. And I think that F1 fans pretty consistently have rejected gimmicks whenever they've been thrown in. I mean, even sprint races, you know, I really like the sprint race format, but a lot of fans still don't really care for that too much. So it's an interesting topic, and I just hope we don't end up with some kind of half-hearted system where there's points at some practice sessions and the teams kind of don't really know what to make of it. And especially if it's hard to explain. That's always the worst thing as a journalist, is when they make something that's like, right, it takes like 5 minutes to explain this thing. So we'll see. But I think there's definitely legs to it. I definitely think they can make the weekends kind of mean more, you know, across what they do. But they have to be really careful, I think, not to kind of ruin the integrity of what we have so far.
Yeah, because can you imagine if a championship is decided in a practice session and you know you're kind of going into the weekend knowing that the title could be decided that weekend, and you go and turn on qualifying thinking that's the first time that it's actually worth watching anything, and you get told, oh, by the way, Max Verstappen won it yesterday by topping FP1. It's just like,
because he did the fastest time on the hard tires in practice, and he got 5 points for that.
So I mean, I don't want to be too critical about it without knowing exactly what's being planned. And it seems some of the messaging in Stefano's quotes was either taken out of context or it wasn't exactly what he meant to say. He wasn't just saying, let's strip free practices from all races, because for the people that attend races, free practices are actually quite good. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that there was 3 hours of free practice on a Friday. And I know from talking to people that go and watch in the grandstands that now they've cut that to just 2 hours, 2 1-hour sessions rather than 2 1.5-hour sessions. People have lost, track time. They've lost time just seeing the cars on track. And when you go to a race weekend, obviously the thing you're really excited about is watching the race, or maybe the final seconds of qualifying. But in terms of just that wow factor of, God, the cars are on track, look how amazing they look, that happens on the Friday. So I think there needs to be a balance between why we have practice in the first place, and who's it serving, and then also just kind of realizing that it's okay if the only things that are worth tuning in for are qualifying and the race, and maybe a sprint race every now and again. It doesn't have to be that every single time the cars are on track, it's some kind of spectacle or whatever, because I think they still serve a purpose for the people that are there. And when we have 23 races going on 25, do we really need more, more stuff to be tuning into? Do we really need more stuff to be focusing on? Like Nate said, more potential confusion in how a system works. I mean, I tune into NASCAR every now and again. I always have to remind myself of the rules around the stages and then the playoff and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes just keeping it simpler is actually far more attractive to casual fans than trying to turn everything into a competitive session.
I'd compare it a little bit to the Pro Bowl in the NFL and what a joke that's become, because obviously you had something that was pretty cool as a concept. The best players from either team. Obviously the massive differences between the two, but the reason the Pro Bowl doesn't work is because players at that point in the season aren't going 100% into tackles, into everything. And now it's basically become like flag football, hasn't it? It's basically a complete joke. Like I see clips.
Position.
Yeah, I just see clips
camp.
of it, and I'm just like, is this really, like, just let these guys go on holiday a week early? Like, why are they doing this? Like, just so humiliating, and it's just turned into a complete joke of an event. And I feel like one thing I saw when we were in testing, I've done testing since 2015. On location, testing's pretty boring by its very nature. It's long sessions. The teams are out. They don't really give you any information. They're not telling you what fuel's in the car and stuff. And lots of fans are saying this year, we're like, this is so boring. They need to make this more entertaining. I just thought, well, no, like, you've decided to tune into a test session. Like, what did you expect?
That's on you.
If they said we're going to stream the Tampa Bay Buccaneers training camp, and I watched it and I was like, this isn't very entertaining, the only person to blame there is me. Because it's like, what do you expect? So I think that there has to be some realism to this. There's obviously a lot of new fans coming to Formula One who want to see as much of it as they can, and that's great. But yeah, I think sometimes watching less of something makes it more enjoyable. To go back to the NFL, if the NFL was on for 32 weeks of the year, I think people's appetite for it would be a lot less.
Lose its luster.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that Laurence is right. When you have this many races, the idea of doing more in those weekends is just nuts. So yeah, hopefully Stefano was just caught unawares with that interview, because it did seem like he was kind of, a microphone was just put in front of him and he kind of spoke. And obviously English isn't his first language, so sometimes things come out a bit differently. So yeah, we'll see. Watch this space, but hopefully that's something that just kind of dies away over the next couple of weeks.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.